Welcome to the Nameless.
The first time I saw the lights, I was already underwater. They looked wrong immediately. Too warm, too steady, like porch lamps left on at night. I remember hanging there, fins barely moving, watching the glow rise out of the dark beneath me. The lake was supposed to be empty below a certain depth. Mud, trees, old foundations maybe. Not lights. Not the soft yellow squares that looked exactly like windows. My dive partner tugged my arm, signaling to go up, but I couldn't stop staring. It felt like something had noticed me noticing it. I told myself it was a trick of the water, reflections, bioluminescence, anything normal. But even as we surfaced, I kept thinking the same quiet thought over and over. Someone had left the lights on. I grew up about an hour from the lake. Everyone around there knew the story, even if they didn't talk about it much. The town that used to sit in the valley was called Belmont. It had been flooded decades ago when they built the dam. They relocated the people, tore down most of the buildings, and let the water take the rest. At least that's what we were told. As kids, we'd drive past the lake on the way to camping trips, and my dad would point out the water and say, "That used to be Main Street." He always said it like a joke, like it was something interesting but finished, over, the kind of thing that belonged safely in the past. When I was older, I started diving. Nothing extreme, just recreational stuff. The lake was popular with divers because it was deep and cold and had a reputation. People liked to say you could still see rooftops if the water was clear enough. Most of that was exaggeration, but not all of it. If you knew where to go, you could find pieces of Belmont still down there. A school foundation, a church basement, stone steps that led nowhere. I'd done 2 dives there before without anything strange happening. Just silence and silt, and the occasional sense of being somewhere I didn't belong. The 3rd dive was the one with the lights. After that day, I couldn't let it go. I kept replaying the image in my head, trying to rationalize it. Divers forums had threads about Belmont, and buried in between photos of rusted signs and collapsed walls were comments about glows and windows. Most people dismissed them. A few didn't. I went back 2 weeks later with a different partner, a guy named Aaron, who'd been diving longer than I had. I didn't tell him exactly what I'd seen. I just said I wanted to check a specific area near the old residential zone. The water was murkier that day. Visibility dropped fast as we descended, the world narrowing to the beam of my flashlight and the steady sound of my own breathing. The lake swallowed sound in a way that always made me uneasy. It wasn't just quiet. It felt like the quiet was pressing back. We passed the skeletal outline of a house about 20 minutes in. Just the frame, boards stripped away, nails dark with age. Then another, and another. They came closer together, like a neighborhood compressed by water and time. That's when the lights appeared again. They weren't everywhere, just a few, distant at first, then closer as we moved. Square shapes, slightly blurred by the water, but unmistakable. Windows, lit from inside. I signaled Aaron, pointing. He hesitated, then nodded, probably thinking the same thing I had the first time, that it was some kind of reflection. We moved closer. The houses were more intact here, walls still standing, doors hanging crookedly on swollen hinges, and in one of them, a single light glowed behind a window, steady and patient. I felt a tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with air. We didn't go inside. We hovered there, just outside the doorway, our lights cutting through the lake's gloom. The glow inside didn't flicker. It didn't react to us at all. Aaron tapped his gauge and signaled to head back. I agreed, even though every part of me wanted to stay. As we turned away, I glanced back one last time. The light was closer to the window now. On the surface, Aaron laughed it off. said it had to be something natural. Quiet pockets of gas, phosphorescent algae. He listed explanations until they sounded convincing. I nodded along, but I didn't tell him what I'd seen at the end. I didn't tell anyone. After that, things got subtle. I started dreaming about water. Not drowning, just standing knee-deep in it, watching it rise. In the dreams, there were houses around me, lights on, curtains drawn, and the feeling that I was late. I went back to the lake alone a month later, telling myself I just needed closure. I stayed near the shore that time, no diving, just sitting on the dock as evening settled in. That's when I noticed the reflections. As the sun went down, small points of light appeared on the surface of the water. At first, I thought it was nearby houses, but the angles were wrong. The reflections didn't line up with anything on land. They clustered near the center of the lake, forming faint, uneven rows. Windows. I stood there until it was fully dark, until the reflections sharpened, and the lake looked like a sky turned upside down. I remember thinking how calm it all felt, how ordinary, like a town settling in for the night. I didn't dive again after that. I told myself I was done with it, but Belmont followed me anyway. I started noticing patterns. The lights always appeared around the same time of year, late summer, early fall, when the water was warmest, when the lake was still. I found old records at the county office, newspaper clippings about the flooding. There were photos of Belmont before the dam, families posing on porches, streetlights glowing at dusk. One article mentioned delays in the evacuation, how some residents had refused to leave until the last possible moment, how the water had risen faster than expected. Another article, much smaller, mentioned that a few homes hadn't been cleared properly, that some belongings were left behind, that the town had been flooded before everything was accounted for. No mention of lights. The next time something happened, I wasn't even near the lake. I was driving home late, passing a reservoir closer to the city. As I crossed the bridge, I glanced down out of habit. For just a second, I saw them, a line of soft yellow squares beneath the dark water, gone as soon as I looked again. That's when the fear changed shape. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was the slow realization that whatever I'd seen at Belmont wasn't confined there. I went back one last time in the fall, telling myself I needed to see it in daylight. The lake was low from a dry season. The shoreline pulled back to reveal mud and debris, and rooftops. They broke the surface in a few places, dark shingle slick with algae. I walked along the exposed edge, heart pounding, until I found a house with part of its second story visible. The window glass was intact. Inside it was dark, but as the sun dipped lower, I saw something move behind the glass. Not a figure, just a shift, like someone walking past a lamp. The light came on slowly, not a switch flipping, but a gradual bloom, as if the house itself was waking up. I stood there longer than I should have, long enough for the light in the next house to come on, then another. I thought about knocking. The idea came fully formed and completely irrational, like it had been waiting for me. Just a polite tap, see if anyone answered. Instead, I stepped back, and that's when I heard it. Not voices, not words, just the faintest sound of movement. Doors closing, something being set down. The quiet life sounds of a place settling. The water crept closer to my boots as the light faded. I left without looking back. The lake level rose again that winter. The houses disappeared. The lights went with them. People still talk about Belmont sometimes. Divers still post photos. Sometimes late at night, I'll see a new comment on an old thread. Someone asking if anyone else has noticed the windows. I never reply. Last week, during a storm, the power went out in my neighborhood. I stood at my window, watching the dark, when I noticed a soft glow reflecting in a puddle at the end of my driveway. For a moment, it looked like a town, lit up beneath the ground. Then the power came back on, and the reflection was gone. But I left my lights off the rest of the night, just in case.